to the CDPA's monthly version of the pivot table. Today, we're going to be talking about shifting your business to a customer-centric approach, where you actually focus on your business nurturing, developing, and acquiring more valuable customers instead of focusing on all your customers or being product focused. This is a big shift. It requires planning, change management, navigating all sorts of complexity. So we're going to hear from two people that have done this before and learn from their experience. But before we get to intros, just a few housekeeping items. Today's discussion is being recorded and will be available on thecdpa.org next week. All attendees are on mute for today's discussion, but there is a Q&A box at the bottom right of your screen if you do have questions. We may not get to all of them because this is just a brief 20-minute chat, but we'll try and weave that into the conversation. So now for intros. Today we've got Jon Francis, who is the Chief Analytics Officer at Starbucks Coffee Company. He is responsible for analytics and data strategy, data science, and market research for the enterprise. That means he supports customer marketing, digital, pricing, product, partner, ops services, and store. So he's got a big job. Prior to Starbucks, Jon was Director of Consumer Data Science and Technology for Nike, where he drove the transformation of analytics and big data, cloud-based architecture for the global consumer knowledge and e-commerce organizations. He's also had analytics positions at major brands such as Amazon, Microsoft, Expedia, and T-Mobile, all great Seattle companies. Ben Grant is my colleague here at Amperity, and he is our VP of Strategic Services. And his team helps Amperity clients use our platforms to activate their customer data, both as a source for strategic insight, for management decision-making, and for highly personalized cultivation and acquisition-focused marketing. So he's had a lot of experience across all sorts of brands and verticals. He's passionate about organizational change as a means of executing innovative strategies. So with that intro, I'm going to turn it over to Jon and Ben to have their conversation.
Thank you, Jeannie. I won the coin toss, so I get to get us started this morning. Jon, super happy to be here with you. If you'll forgive the product placement, I'm enjoying my organic Yukon blend, which is served up by a very helpful, personalized recommendation in the app. It was spot on based on the coffees that I enjoyed in the past. So we've got an awesome topic today. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to chatting about it with you. Maybe we could just start by setting the stage with a definition. You know, what we're talking about, this idea of a customer-centric approach, and that might mean different things to different people. What does it mean to you to have a customer-centric approach as a business?
Yeah, and thanks, Ben and Jeannie, for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. I know it'll go fast, but I think we'll hit some good material. And I think to your question, I think just being customer-centric, it may be obvious, but it is putting the customer at the middle of a lot of decisioning. And if I think about, the best example is really if you think through the lens of marketing. And, I think maybe historically, and I've certainly seen this in my career, there was a approach to database marketing where you would say, let's just say you're, an apparel retailer. You might have a new shirt or a new pair of shoes or a new product line. And it was more about, who should we be talking to about, product line X or Y, and building the segmented list through which you would then go talk to that customer. And that, I think, that may have worked for a time. I think we've now flipped, and what you see, more forward-thinking companies doing is, no, let's put the customer in the middle of our communications, and to say, it's more about, you have an opportunity to engage with a customer and create an elevated experience. What's the right product? What's the right channel? What's the right cadence, time of day, frequency? There's so many decisions that go into this now, and it's not as simple as saying, we just have to push this product that we built. Like you may get a short-term revenue lift, but inevitably what you really want to focus on is putting the customer in the middle, building long-term engagement, and that's making sure that you're building capabilities and personalization that really resonate with the customer. And then the only other thing I would say about being customer centric, it extends significantly beyond marketing. And what I mean by that is, and this is where the integrating the data is really important. It's how do you think about everything from inventory management and using customer signals to how you think about, for us, product development. And, an example would be look at what Netflix did when they incubated House of Cards. That was based on a lot of customer behavioral data and understanding what resonated for their customers. And so they actually created content off of those behavioral trends. I think we could look at the same way. Like, how would we do R&D? We've got billions of transactions of Starbucks customers, and we can look at the affinity around calories and taste and preferences, and we want to use that data to create products. So I'm curious, Ben, just in kind of in your experience, if you've seen other brands who kind of view it in the same way from a retail or otherwise perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that sort of that framing of the leapfrog evolution that you just made, going from, okay, we've got a product, how do we sell it, to we've got a product, how do we sell it sort of intelligently, to actually how do we decide what our product is, based on who our customers and maybe our VIP customers are. Yeah, one of my favorite examples is I got to work with a fashion retailer. Who, of course, were putting out different collections, different products on a pretty regular, seasonal basis. That's their whole industry. And, for centuries that design process has sort of worked in a certain way where there's been some degree of customer input to shape the design process, but it's also relied a lot on sort of like, creative geniuses and the folks who understand trends in fashion entirely, and putting a lot of risk and a lot of sort of bank on the opinion of one or two single decision makers. What we had the opportunity to work with this particular fashion retailer to do was to look at very specific trends in a very specific group of their customers. The very specific group of their customers was what you could call the VIP group. Those being the ones who, of course, engaged the most with the brand, spent the most money, but also were predicted to be the highest spenders in the future. And we said, okay, well, of course we can look at things like, where they bought and what their preferred price point is, and that'll increase our chances of selling to them in the future. But if we really want to create meaningful relationships with these folks, let's give them more of what they want from a style perspective. It's a close analog to, I think, what you're describing at Starbucks in terms of R&D. Let's look at fit, right? Not just product category like pants versus shirts. Let's talk about fit and the specific elements and attributes of products that this VIP segment seems to engage with. And let's put that front and center at the design table when it comes time to talk about next year's fashions. And that's going to, in turn, inform all kinds of really important downstream business decisions, with merchandising and sourcing and, setting in motion the whole machine around actually making clothes, so it's consequential. And it's a good example, I hope, of the kind of next level application of this stuff, next level customer centricity.
Yeah, I love that, and I think to your point about I think it's also there's always going to be a mix of art and science, which is and especially as you think of those SMEs or those experts, and whether it's in fashion or in coffee. The power comes in when you combine what the data is telling you with the expertise of someone who might be a SME. I think it's just how do you evolve that in a meaningful way and get the best of both. So yeah, I love that example.
Yeah. So you've had the opportunity to take part in this kind of transformation in a couple of different, very well known, well loved brands. I'd love to know anything thematic from your experience in terms of the obstacles that you might encounter as a leader who is trying to bring an organization along on this journey, and what might be effective ways of addressing those obstacles in your experience.
Yeah, I think one maybe, maybe a learning came through failure, which is there's sort of the field of dreams approach, which is, hey, if we just go build a lot of capabilities here, people will just naturally clamor to using them. And I think my learning, especially in the last few years, has been that will fail every time. And, so I think it's about being super intentional about how you take folks along in organizations and help them on the change management. Because, if you just take a marketing organization as an example, they've done and they have a way of work that is well tuned and well oiled, and have done it in a certain way, just in terms of how they engage with customers and the strategies and the approaches. And if you have a new, let's just say, a mousetrap, that is maybe different, and it may be more machine learning driven, more AI based. It's not as simple as saying, well, let's just, not everyone necessarily clamors, because you have to be intentional about how you take people along the journey, help them understand how you think about testing those capabilities against what you may have historically done. So I think it's good. I think maybe the learning is a couple of things. So one is you have to do a fair amount of knowledge uh, and education management, just in terms of how you bring partners along. But you also have to be willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and help with the wiring in and the change management on the journey. And we're really working side by side, and whether it's a marketing organization or another function. And so we've kind of tackled it now by building a strategy organization with my analytics team. That really, the intent of that team is really to help partner with the functional areas we support in terms of how we evolve with the use of data to power different kinds of decisions in different processes. And we're just getting that going. So I think we're still learning, but it just came out of this realization that the field of dreams approach won't work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed we've had the opportunity to work with brands at all stages of this journey at Amperity. And one thing I've observed is that there are when it comes to creating the motivation and the cultural support for a really big cross-functional lift, there's either the aspirational or the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I think Starbucks is the best example I've ever encountered of the aspirational, where it's because everybody's so passionate about the customer experience and managing every detail of the customer experience in such a way that it creates loyalty and creates general good feeling and I think pride in the brand and pride in working there. We see that in some places, and obviously if you could have a choice between the two, you'd choose that one. But we also observe that there is sometimes fear as a real motivator if you're in a brand where you feel perhaps behind in your approach to customer centricity, and you feel as though it's becoming a competitive disadvantage. And the sort of narrative that emerges is we have this is a competitive issue for us, right? We have other brands in our categories are doing a better job talking to their customers, and so everybody, let's get in gear, or else this is an existential issue. I've observed that can be almost as motivating, but not as much, and also certainly a whole lot less fun. Have you seen things as sort of occurring along that spectrum?
Yeah, I have. And I think the other, maybe the other dimension here too is, um, just being honest about, you know, it, I think finding resources, who are in this analytic and data science space, who are also willing to, maybe be a bit more humble and empathetic, and actually really take the time to understand deeply the business and what the opportunity is. And I've even been accused multiple times in my career of, and because it's usually these analytic functions sit on the side a bit more, that hey, you don't really understand the business. And I think I would kind of always scoff at that, but kind of in hindsight, I look back and say, you know what, I think those people are right. Like, so I think a big part of our job right now is to really spend more time getting immersed in understanding the underlying facets of the business. And, I think the more that you can do that and walk a day in the shoes of someone in another organization who you're trying to partner with and evolve and get over some of that fear, as you called it, is to really create that empathy and that shared understanding and really kind of function as, an amendment or an integration into their broader team. So you can really see eye to eye and, kind of have a singular vision for what the priorities are. So I think that's been pretty important too.
Yeah, that really resonates. I mean, I couldn't agree more. These human steps are the first steps, right? Getting to a place of understanding and empathy between the human beings who will be working together to achieve this transformational change, right? If you can't do that, it's kind of like, don't bother, right? But once you have done that, shifting focus a little bit towards the more structural things. I mean, obviously, like any innovation strategy that's cross-functional, customer centricity is hard to pull off, sort of technically, right? Structurally. What are some of the lessons that you've learned there? I mean, I look back at what I've seen. I think about effective ways of putting cross-functional governance in place. Things like incentives at the team and personal level. Making sure that the right champions are identified and elevated, kind of classic change management stuff. Anything on that more sort of technical or structural side, as a sort of effective tactic once you have the human buy-in, stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to approach this. I think, creating those advocates uh, in the organization, frankly, all the way at the highest level of the company to CEOs down to the individual contributors and the teams that are willing to, be on this transformation journey. I think that's one. I think the other part is just thinking through, how do you start small? Because I think it's so easy to get wound up and say, we need the perfect organization and flying formation. We need the perfect data infrastructure, have the best and most amazing creative and content for offers. I mean, the reality is, you'll never get to that panacea. And so I think, can you find scrappy ways? And, I think for us too, it's about getting the right level of investment. Like even to build a panacea, you'll never get out of the gate the investment you need, just based on belief to say, oh yeah, well, if we give you how many ever 50, 100 million, whatever level of investment to build out the capability that, you're going to go build it and come back in 3 years. That doesn't work like that. So the goal is to build, small scale tests, find opportunities where you can demonstrate in a material way what incremental revenue you're driving off of, customer based personalization or other capabilities, get those wins, prove the value, and then it becomes this cycle where, you get a lot of hunger and you can prove that, hey, this is driving meaningful results for the business. Then let's go make the case to get more investment, to do more testing and bigger testing. And then you start to get into a different cycle of how you can bring that to life at scale. But I think the more that you can start small, because I think that's where a lot of teams fail is, I think it's this, well, we're going to go build out this perfect solution. We want the best algorithms. Um, and I think you have to be willing to kind of forego a lot of that, at least for folks who are in, businesses such as Starbucks, where, it's a real operator's mindset. We've got to, take a dollar today to prove that you can get return on it today. So what's the way that you can quickly do that and show that it's additive?
Yeah, totally. I see we have like a minute left. I love closing on that thought. Quick wins. Don't get stuck, right? Don't overthink it. There's a reason why that groups of 3-year-olds are faster than solving some puzzles than groups of MBAs, right? But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And yeah, I think in marketing, and particularly in direct response, personalized marketing, maybe some of you listening will find that opportunity to just do one thing, one campaign, one channel to show that there's growth there for your business, and then just build on that, and so on and so forth. Love that.
Great. Well, thanks so much, guys. It's always nice to be able to eavesdrop into a conversation between two really smart people with lots of experience. We hope you've enjoyed the pivot table. The next one will be on March 26th, so please join us then. And again, a big thanks to Jon and Ben today.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.